Welcome to the Great Basin Seasonal Fire Potential Outlook for August through November 2017. This is Gina McGuire. Over the next several minutes, we'll look at the recent weather and drought conditions across the Great Basin, along with the current state of the fuels and the expected weather and fire activity for the rest of this fire season into November. Over the last month, temperatures, the image on the left, have been above normal across all of the western U.S., and most significantly above normal over northern Nevada into southwest Idaho into the west central mountains. Also, precipitation, the image on the right, shows well above normal precipitation along the Arizona Strip into far southern areas of the Great Basin, with above normal precipitation extending further north near Interstate 80. Further north, well below normal precipitation has occurred over the last 30 days over much of northern Nevada into Idaho. If we look at the precipitation since last October, so the water year since October 1st, we see generally above normal precipitation, which was largely accounted for throughout the wintertime, which will be showed in the next slide. Taking into the account the winter and the precipitation we've seen over the last month with the monsoon, precipitation is now near to above normal over southern areas of the Great Basin as well. As a reminder, the very heavy precipitation we saw over the fall and spring is indicated in this area of dark green over the northern half of the Great Basin, and that is still significant to date because these are the areas that have seen a significant grass crop with very high fuel loading and continuity, in some areas 200 to 300% of normal. This has played a large role in our fire activity and fire spread since May across the Great Basin, with activity only increasing over the last 4 to 6 weeks. If we look at the Drought Monitor and Outlook, Drought Monitor currently is showing some areas of abnormally dry conditions over parts of the eastern half of the Great Basin, which is largely due to soil moisture, despite those areas having above normal precipitation. No changes in the drought is expected, however, over the next few months, with no drought areas of any significance expected to develop. Now that we have looked at the weather leading up to August, how has this changed our fuel conditions across the area? 10-hour fuel moistures are still very critical over the western and northern half of the Great Basin, with higher fuel moisture further east in areas that have seen more consistent monsoon moisture. 100-hour fuel moistures are still critical also over much of Idaho into northern and western Nevada, and much higher to the east. 1,000-hour fuel moistures are also at critical levels, but the one area of note is over the west central Idaho mountains that have seen significant warm and dry conditions recently, where now 1,000-hour fuel moisture has decreased significantly to near record lows for the time of year. ERCs have also been on the rise across northern and western areas and are certainly above normal, but also have been near records earlier in July and have seen a slight moderation towards the end of the month due to some moisture moving north. However, these areas are quickly drying out after record heat has returned for the early part of August. Because of our current fuel conditions, we still have a fuels and fire behavior advisory out for southern Idaho into far northwest Utah and the northern half of Nevada, mainly for the significant grass loading and continuity from what we saw from the precipitation in the winter and spring. So again, grasses are 200 to 300% of normal with respect to fuel loading and has been causing a significant problem with fire spread across these areas. Also, as we move towards early August, live fuel moisture have been decreasing to critical levels, and ERCs are above normal or even still near records in some of these areas. So now we have all the pieces to the puzzle fuel-wise coming into line within this region. Therefore, any fire start has the potential to grow into a large fire rapidly. We'll briefly talk about the state of El Nino and La Nina, only because it won't really have much of an effect on our weather until we get towards the winter. Current conditions are we are currently in a state of ENSO neutral, so not La Nina or El Nino, and these conditions will likely persist for the next couple of months. However, as we go into the fall and winter, you see some of these lines start to trend up into some of the redder areas, and this indicates a likely turn towards at least a weak version of El Nino as we go towards the fall and winter. And this could impact our winter precipitation across the area, but we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into later outlooks. Now, if we put everything that we've learned together, what happens from here for the rest of the fire season into the early fall? First, here's our 4-month outlook that takes us through November, and you can see areas of temperature forecast in the middle row with precipitation forecast in the lower row for the next 4 months. So for August and September, we're looking at still very warm temperatures across really all of the Great Basin with the exception of the far east. Also, we'll see drier conditions most prevalent over western and northern areas, with the monsoon still active over the eastern half of the Great Basin. As we move into October and November, we still may see these warm conditions persist with generally dry weather across parts of the Great Basin. So we will be looking at, especially as we go into the fall, when the end of fire season will be. But right now, with these warm and dry conditions in the western and northern areas, fire season will continue for some time. So now if we put the pieces of the puzzle for everything we've seen so far, plus our expectations for the weather conditions, now we'll look at the expectations for fire activity. We will continue to see large fire potential above normal over western and northern Nevada into Idaho and possibly the far northwest corner of Utah as we move through August and September, and these areas remain on what's expected to be the drier and warmer side of the Great Basin. Therefore, we'll likely see areas of lightning move through those areas, possibly bringing some moisture at times. However, conditions will quickly dry out immediately after, returning fuel conditions to critical levels. Further east, generally normal fire potential is expected, which would be fairly low for the time of year across southern and eastern areas due to the monsoon moisture. As we move through October and November, we are not painting any areas above normal at the present time. However, we will continue to look at these areas as if we do see warm and dry conditions and we see the greater potential for dry cold fronts bringing us windy periods during October and November. This may keep fire season going a little bit longer this year just due to the heavy grass load and continuity over the northern half of the Great Basin. However, right now, confidence is low, but we will continue to monitor this situation. That concludes our seasonal fire potential forecast for the Great Basin. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.